Warning: the following story contains descriptions of graphic violence. Viewer discretion is advised. Number 1. Willie Bosket. Willie Bosket was born in Harlem on December 9, 1962. His father, Willie Butch Bosket Sr., killed 2 people in a Milwaukee pawn shop shortly after his son was conceived and was sentenced to life in prison, where he earned a degree in computer science and psychology. Butch was released from prison and went on to get a job as a computer programmer for an aerospace company, but was charged with a crime. He shot his girlfriend and committed suicide to avoid being caught. Bosket has a traumatic childhood. When his grandfather was released from prison, he essayed Willie many times. His mother, Laura, had different live-in boyfriends who beat her, and as a boy, Bosket often jumped in to defend her. In one incident, hitting a man with a pipe and slashing him with a knife, and in another, threatening, "I'm going to burn that motherfucker up." He also suffered a head injury when he ran out into the street and was hit by a car. This was all before he was 10 years old. When he was 9 years old, his mother, heeding advice, petitioned he be placed in a center, stating he was a person in need of supervision. He was placed at the Children's Center in Manhattan, but escaped and quickly ended up at Spofford, which was a secure detention center and a child's equivalent to an adult doing time in Attica State Prison. He would be in and out of detention centers and reformatories, except for a short time when he turned 21 and had served out his time for murder. His mother had told him, "Don't be bullied, hit back. To get respect, you've got to be the toughest." In the different centers, he developed a reputation for violence, upon which he prided himself. He told juvenile authorities that one day he would be a killer, just like his father. On March 19, 1978, Bosket, then 15 years old, shot and killed Noel Perez on a train operating on the New York City subway's 3 train during an attempted robbery near the Harlem 148th Street terminal station. 8 days later, Bosket and another accomplice shot dead another man, Moises Perez, in another attempted robbery at the back of another 3 train at the 145th Street station, one station south of 148th Street. In between, Bosket and his accomplice shot a New York City Transit employee working in the Lenox Yard, adjacent to the Harlem 148th Street station, and committed 2 other armed robberies, one of them on the A service. Bosket was tried for the murders in New York City's family court. As the trial was underway, Bosket surprised his own lawyer by pleading guilty to both murders. He was sentenced to a maximum of 5 years in the Goshen Youth Facility. Although prosecutors tried to get a longer sentence, 5 years was the most they could get under the law at the time. The short length of Bosket's sentence caused a public outcry. Governor Hugh Carey had opposed efforts by his opponent in that year's gubernatorial election, State Assembly Minority Leader RDERERS, to have juveniles tried as adults for certain crimes. However, after reading a report on Bosket's sentence, Carey called the state legislature into a special session to pass the Juvenile Offender Act of 1978. Under this act, children as young as 13 years old could be tried as an adult in court for crimes such as murder and receive the same penalties as adults. New York was the first state to enact a law of this nature. All of the other states have since followed suit. Because it was Willie Bosket's case that was used to push laws allowing juveniles to be tried as adults, it is sometimes referred to as the Willie Bosket Law. A year after he began serving his sentence for the 2 murders, Bosket escaped from the youth facility. He was caught after 2 hours, tried as an adult for the escape, and sentenced to 4 years in state prison. He was returned to the Division of Youth in 1979 and was released in 1983. After 100 days, he was arrested when a man living in his apartment complex claimed Bosket had robbed and assaulted him. While awaiting trial on that crime, Bosket assaulted several court officers. He was found guilty of attempted assault for the dispute in the apartment and sentenced to 7 years in prison. At this point, his escape from the youth facility nearly came back to haunt him. He was 16 years old at the time, meaning he was now considered an adult for criminal purposes. In New York, escaping from a correctional facility is a felony, even if the facility is a youth facility. If he had been convicted of assaulting the court officers, It would have been his third felony conviction. Under New York's habitual offender law, he was facing an automatic sentence of 25 years to life. However, he was acquitted. Convinced that he would die in prison, Bosket took out his rage on correctional officers, getting into numerous altercations. Arrested for one of those incidents, he was convicted of assault and arson and sentenced to 25 years to life. In 1989, he was sentenced to an additional 25 years to life sentence for stabbing corrections officer Earl Porter at the maximum security Shawangunk Correctional Facility. After the 1988 assault, Bosket was transferred to the Woodburn Correctional Facility, where in April 1989, he drew a third 25 years to life sentence for assaulting a correctional officer with a chain. All three sentences are consecutive. His earliest possible release date is September 16, 2062, when he will be 99 years old, all but assuring that he will die in prison. Since his conviction for the 1989 assault, Bosket has been housed in solitary confinement while at Woodbourne, nominally a minimum security prison. Bosket was housed in a specialty-built plexiglass-lined cell stripped of everything but a cot and a sink toilet combination, with 4 video cameras watching him at all times. He was only allowed out of his cell for 1 hour a day, apart from medical visits and haircuts. Although he was allowed visitors, they could only speak to him through a window in his cell. Bosket once declared war on a prison system that he claimed made him a monster, and was cited for almost 250 disciplinary violations from 1985 to 1994. However, he has not had a disciplinary violation since 1994. According to a 2008 report in the New York Times, due to his numerous incidents of violence during the 1980s and 1990s, he was initially not slated to move into the general population until 2046, when he will be 84 years old. Department spokesperson Eric Chris told the Times, "This guy was violent or threatening violence every day. Granted, it has been a while, but there are consequences for being violent in prison. We have zero tolerance for that." Unquote. He has since been transferred to 5 Points, a maximum security prison. Although he is still in solitary confinement, he is evaluated periodically, and due to his clean disciplinary record in recent years, may join the general population sooner than 2046. In December 2022, Bosket is listed as being incarcerated in the Windy Correctional Facility. Number 2. Robert Yummy Zandifer. Robert Zandifer was born in Chicago, Illinois, on April 17, 1983. Zandifer's mother, Lorena Zandifer, had over 30 arrests while prostituting, many of which were drug-related. Zandifer's father, Robert Atkins, was absent throughout Zandifer's life due to incarceration for a felony gun charge. Zandifer was physically abused from the time he was an infant. Before he was 3 years old, Zandifer was already known to the Department of Children and Family Services. Physical examinations showed that Zandifer was alleged to have had cigarette burns on his arms and neck, as well as linear bruising consistent with physical beatings. Lorena initially blamed the abuse on Zandifer's father, although she later recanted it. In 1987, Zandifer and his siblings were moved from his mother's home by DCFS and were sent to live with their grandmother in the Roseland neighborhood of Chicago. His grandmother's residence contained as many as 19 children on some occasions. By most accounts, his grandmother's home was not much better than Zandifer's previous home. Zandifer, by the age of 8, quit attending school and began to roam the streets, stealing cars and breaking into houses. At the age of 10, Zandifer was arrested on charges of armed robbery. A psychological examiner at the time reported that Robert is a child growing up without any encouragement and support, and that he has a sense of failure that has infiltrated almost every aspect of his inner self. In 1993, Zandifer and his siblings were removed from his grandmother's home and were sent to the Lawrence Hall DCFS shelter on Chicago's north side, from which Zandifer ran away and never returned. From 1993 until his death, Zandifer's whereabouts and living arrangements remain unclear, although he continued to be arrested by the authorities. On August 28, 1994, Zandifer was ordered to do a favor for his gang. He opened fire several times with a 9mm semi-automatic pistol, striking several youths. Sandifer quickly fled the scene. Among his victims was a 14-year-old girl, Siobhan Dean, who was fatally hit by a stray bullet. After the shooting, police were looking for Sandifer, who was hiding with gang members in the neighborhood. On August 31st, 1994, while standing on a neighbor's porch after asking to call his grandmother, asking for prayers as he was going to turn himself in, Sandifer was met by brothers Craig Hardaway and Derek Hardaway, ages 16 and 14, who were both members of the Black Disciple Street Gang. Sandifer was told he was being taken to a safe location out of town and ordered into a waiting car. Instead, he was taken to a railroad underpass at East 108th Street and South Dauphin Avenue and told to get on his knees. While kneeling, Sandifer was shot twice in the back of the head by the two Hardaway brothers. Sandifer's body was discovered by the Chicago Police Department in the early morning of September 1st, 1994. Around 400 people attended Sandifer's funeral, which was held at the Youth Center of the Church of God in Christ on Chicago's northwest side. The two Hardaway brothers were later convicted of Robert Sandifer's murder. Derek received a 45-year sentence, and Craig received a 60-year sentence. Derek was released from prison in December 2016. Craig was released from prison in December 2020. Number 3. Sharon CARR. Sharon CARR was born in Belize in 1979 and was brought up by her mother and stepfather. She was one of 4 children and grew up in great poverty. She never knew her biological father. After moving to England in 1986, the family settled in Camberley, Surrey. Her parents' marriage soon ended following a serious domestic violence incident, which Sharon's mother poured boiling fat over Sharon's stepfather. The incident caused the couple to be hospitalized with burns, and Sharon's mother charged with assault. At school, Sharon was initially described as polite and helpful by teachers. Friends said that she was a sociable girl who preferred the company of older boys, and also said that she occasionally showed flashes of aggression. Later, she became much more badly behaved, becoming disruptive and attention-seeking. She had problems relating to authority. In 1990, her head teacher at Cornwallis Junior High School in Camberley contacted social workers over her behavior. Sharon was briefly put into foster care, but she returned home after only 1 month away. By the time she started secondary school, her mother had a new partner who already had 2 daughters. On June 7, 1992, CARR randomly stabbed 18-year-old apprentice hairdresser Katie Ratcliffe to death as she walked home in the early hours from Ragamuffins nightclub in Camberley. In total, CARR stabbed Ratcliffe, who was a stranger to her, 32 times with a 6.5-inch knife through her ribs, in her heart and in her vagina and anus. Some of her jewelry was stolen. Ratcliffe's body was taken by CARR and some accomplices and driven to Farnborough, where she was dragged along a road and dumped by a cemetery wall. The body was found later that morning by a group of boys. When police investigated the killing, they noted the brutality of the attack. Some of the knife blows that Ratcliffe had suffered had gone straight through her body. Her sexual organs had been mutilated, and officers found that her clothes had been pulled up, but there was no sign of a sexual assault. Due to the nature and severity of the injuries inflicted, and the fact that the attack appeared to be a sexually motivated one, police believed that the attacker to be a fully grown male. In part because of this, the real killer went unidentified and the case went initially unsolved. With CARR not apprehended, she returned to school but was excluded twice in early 1994. 2 years to the day after Ratcliffe's murder on June 7, 1994, CARR attacked 13-year-old fellow pupil Anne Marie Clifford with a knife for no apparent reason in the toilets at Collingwood College Comprehensive School in Surrey. Clifford was stabbed in the back, which punctured her lung, and she nearly died as a result of her injuries. The attack was only stopped when 5 students entered the toilets and intervened, which probably saved the victim's life. Clifford said that CARR was smiling and appeared happy during the attack on her. CARR was quickly arrested and told officers that she enjoyed stabbing cats and had beheaded a dog. After arrest, CARR was sent to a medical assessment center where she tried to strangle 2 members of the staff. She was charged with 2 counts of actual bodily harm for this in addition to the charges for her attack on Clifford. She was convicted in December 1994 and sentenced to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure. She was initially held in various psychiatric units, but continued to regularly seriously assault other females, and so was transferred to an all-boys unit at Aycliffe Secure Center. In September 1995, she was transferred to Bullwood Hall Young Offenders Institution, where it was thought her aggressive and sexualized behavior could be managed. Soon after her transfer to Bullwood Hall, staff discovered that CARR was talking about the killing of Katie Ratcliffe to friends and family on the telephone and in her diary. She also admitted to attacking a prison officer who she said she had a crush on and talked about it to a probation officer. Staff alerted police and they seized her writings and drawings. Her diaries were found to contain detail of her sexual excitement at the thought of Ratcliffe's death, and she also commented that she felt jealous of her victim and remarked about the devil and the forces which motivated her. One passage read, quote, "If I could kill again, I promise I would make you suffer more this time, you fucking slag. Your terrified screams turned me on," unquote. The sexual element of the killing had previously been indicated in the mutilation on Ratcliffe's body. CARR had also written, "I swear I was born to be a murderer," unquote. And in a letter to a friend wrote, "I am a killer. Killing is my business and business is good," unquote. She had also drawn pictures of the knife involved. Detectives questioned her on the murder and she confessed to the killing, admitting that she had repeatedly stabbed Ratcliffe. She graphically described one particular injury and provided details which the police had deliberately withheld, meaning that she had knowledge that only the killer would have. She also knew that a bracelet had been stolen from Ratcliffe, which police had not revealed. CARR helped police film a reconstruction of the murder, which she acted out the murder, and when questioned about the attack, repeatedly laughed about the details. Police found that CARR had a long history of cruelty to animals, having once decapitated a dog with a spade, and concluded that she probably had a form of psychopathic disorder. CARR continued to write her boasts about the murder, even after being questioned by the police, and in January 1996, gave a further series of confessions to prisons officers that she had a crush on. On the 4-year anniversary of the murder on June 7, 1996, she wrote in her diary, quote, "Respect to Katie Ratcliffe, 4 years ago today." CARR was charged with the murder of Ratcliffe in May 1996. Her accomplices did not stand trial. On the 25th of March 1997, after a month-long trial at Winchester Crown Court, CARR was convicted of murder. The jury had deliberated for 5 hours before reaching a unanimous guilty verdict, choosing to convict her for murder and not manslaughter. The conviction meant that CARR was officially Britain's youngest ever female murderer, having only been 12 at the time of the killing. When sentencing CARR, Judge Scott Baker remarked, quote, "What is clear is that you had sexual motive for this killing, and it is apparent both from the brutal manner in which you mutilated her body and chilling entries in your diary that killing, as you put it, turns you on. You are, in my view, an extremely dangerous young woman," unquote. CARR was smiling as she left the dock after the conviction. She received the minimum tariff of 14 years imprisonment after her trial. Criminal psychologist Gordon Tressler noted the extremely unusual nature of the case, saying, quote, "This is a difficult case to understand. One can find precedents of young children killing other children, but in this case, it was a child killing someone who was almost an adult," unquote. CARR was branded the devil's daughter in the press. The media reported extensively on the historical conviction of such a young murderer, highlighting her obsession with death and violence. Following her murder conviction, CARR was held in HM Prison Holloway. She was later transferred to Broadmoor Hospital in 1998. Whilst in Broadmoor, she continued to assault staff and other residents, and admitted wanting to kill a fellow inmate by slitting her throat. On occasion, she also claimed to believe that she was a lizard and tried to cut herself to attempt to find out whether she was still human. In 2004, it was reported that CARR's defense team were challenging her 14-year minimum tariff, as well as her conviction, with CARR wanting her murder conviction to be replaced with one of manslaughter on the grounds on diminished responsibility. However, The appeals were dismissed. In 2007, CARR was moved again to the medium secure Orchard unit, but was sent to HM Prison Bronzefield in 2015 as a restricted status prisoner, as she was presenting a risk to patients and staff. Her warrant stated that she no longer required treatment, or that no effective treatment could be given. In December 2018, she was moved to HM Prison Low Newton, but was quickly moved back to Bronzefield after a violent incident with another inmate in August 2019. In the same year, her application for her restricted status to be downgraded was denied. She appealed against this decision in 2020, but this was also denied on the grounds that she had yet to provide any significant evidence in a reduction in risk. Category A prison supervisors at Bronzefield reported that CARR was still evidencing incidents of volatile relationships and was continuing to have paranoid thoughts. She had also disclosed a desire to murder another prisoner. As of September 2022, CARR continues to be in prison despite the expiration of her minimum tariff. It was also reported in September 2022 that CARR was to have another parole hearing to determine whether she would be released. CARR's case has been noted for being particularly unusual. Whilst female murderers themselves are uncommon, females who kill strangers are even more unusual, and the case of a 12-year-old girl killing an adult stranger has been described as unique. In 2005, there was another stabbing incident at Collingwood College in which a 14-year-old stabbed a fellow pupil. This led to renewed media interest in the school and the CARR case, with allegations being made that there was a culture of problems at Collingwood. However, local MP Michael Gove defended the school. In 2010, CARR's case was again discussed in the press when another British child, 15-year-old Lorraine Thorpe, became Britain's youngest convicted female double murderer. Her case also returned to the news in 2016 when 2 female children were convicted of the murder of a vulnerable woman named Angela Wrightson, which led to comparisons with CARR's case. Sharon CARR is currently imprisoned at HM Prison in Bronzefield. For more content, like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Thank you.